What I bought? A new Blink Mini 2K Plus smart security camera. What I got? 2K clarity sharp enough to see every detail of home when I'm away. Plus audio like I'm in the room, not with my bestie traveling to another city. Plus easy plug-in setup to install faster than skipping through podcast ads. But you'd never skip ads, right? Plus, I got all of this for just $49.99. Blink Mini 2K Plus. Mini camera, max performance. Shop now at amazon.com/blink.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is a special breaking news show recorded on Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. On the show today, Jim, was there any breaking news this week out of the Walt Disney Company? You're on mute, Jim. He's waving his arms? No? Well, that's going to do it for our show this week. We're produced fabulously by Aaron. Wait. Jim is signaling to me that, hold on. He's still on mute, so I have to read his lips. Pop sheeping on fire. Pop sheeping on fire. Jim, that makes no sense. Aaron, can you fix Jim's mic real quick so I can hear what he's saying? And while you're doing that, I will do Jim's intro. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says to the person who stole his antidepressants, I hope you're happy now. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
And, Len, I have an idea who might have taken my antidepressants.
Do you know?
A certain, now former CEO of the Walt Disney Company. In fact, that you must be familiar with the children's book from the 70s, Alexander in the No Good, Really Bad, Terrible Day. Well, if you heard about the sequel, Bob Chapek in the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Sunday.
Yeah, I heard he got the news as he was getting ready to introduce Elton John at a concert, and the entire phone conversation was apparently something like, Bob, you're out, our lawyers will call your lawyers, click. Like, that was the entire thing.
Yeah. When this thing typically happens, there's kind of a corporate PR dance.
Yeah.
You get that boilerplate of wants to spend more time with his
family. Exactly. We thank him for his years of service. Mm-hmm. He's done some great things, and we will all remember the valuable lessons we learned under his or her leadership.
And this just did not happen this time around.
No.
One of the reasons I've been told that it was done in this way is there were still people at Disney who were upset about what happened with Peter Rice. Remember, this was the executive in charge, chairman of entertainment and programming, who Chapek viewed as a threat. He was let go back on June 9th of this year in a 7-minute long meeting in the Team Disney Burbank building.
Yeah, 7 minutes isn't enough time to get your seat warm.
Yeah. So what have you heard?
A couple of things. And Jim, remember, it's still November, and I'm still trying to put a positive spin
we are.
on everything that the Disney company does. So let me just say that Bob Chapek did recently announce that he was forming a cost-cutting committee and looking at potential staff reductions. So he was kind of a visionary in that respect. I'm just saying, he wasn't wrong.
Example. Yeah, there we go.
He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. Okay. If you're going to go out being correct. I think, what I've heard a couple of things. One is that, to your point, after the Tim Rice thing, I don't think his peers actually trusted him. And there was, the rumor that I heard was that one other C-level executive thought that they were going to be thrown under the bus for November's earnings call.
Yeah. Are we naming names at this point, or we
I don't know if we necessarily need to name names.
Okay.
Did you hear the same thing?
Yes, definitely a senior corporate officer who I don't imagine it'll take much for people to work the math here about who would take a hit for Disney's financials being, less than they were supposed to be.
Also, the other weird thing that I still haven't figured out, Jim Cramer saying over the last couple of weeks that Bob Chapek should be fired. That didn't. That seems kind of not. I mean, Jim Cramer's kind of plays an outlandish character on TV, and so it's not entirely out of character for him. But for him to be that specific about that high up a person seems like it was a signal by someone to be like let's run this up the flagpole and see who salutes.
Remember, there was the earnings call on November 8th.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Financial community kind of lost its mind because Bob Chapek just sort of glossed over the $1.74 billion shortfall over at Disney Plus. But he's like, but hey, look at the Oogie Boogie Bash and how many tickets we're selling to Mickey's, Very Merry Christmas Party. And there were people as far back as the earnings call before this, the one on August 10th, who were talking about, look, we have to replace Chapek. And there were also folks who even insist that in that case it was a response to the June 9th, how Peter Rice's firing was handled. But there's also people I've spoken with who push it back as far as 6 months ago, the earnings call in mid-May.
Which one was that one?
In that case, it was the parks had just reopened. They were still in the middle of, or Disneyland had finally reopened. But they were also dealing with all of the woke bad press, the fighting with DeSantis.
I want to talk about this for a second. Go ahead.
But it was one of these situations where you had Bob Chapek with all of these self-inflicted wounds. That this is the guy who's leading the company, this guy with a tin ear who can't realize he's putting the company not in a great light, and we have to do something about this.
I think that's more than people might give it credit for. I mean, everyone's looking at, Disney streaming lost $1.7 billion and, Wall Street wants. To be fair to Bob Chapek, Wall Street has pivoted here from saying you must grow your streaming service and we're willing to accept losses. And then pivoted almost on a dime to, no, you have to be profitable in your streaming services now. And that's not something that you can do overnight, right?
No. I mean, you look at how Paramount Plus and Apple Plus and all of these other streaming services are also struggling.
Right. Not even that, but investors have started to look now and say things like, the Alexa unit of Amazon loses $10 billion a year. And the question is why? So we're entering a tougher part of the economy. Investors are starting to ask those questions. I get it. But going back to your point about Bob Chapek not being great with people, that doesn't help anything, especially if you're in streaming, you need content, right? That is the streaming game, right? You need as much content as you can get, as many new shows as you can get on your platform to get the eyeballs and people to subscribe. And to get content, Jim, you need people who are willing to produce that content. And that means they have to want to work with you. And when Bob Chapek does things like the Scarlett Johansson deal where she thought she was owed more money and they ended up giving her the money, but the way it was handled was so poor. The signal to Hollywood was from Bob Chapek was, we're Disney. We can do whatever we want. We can replace you at a moment's notice, right? That is not a great signal to talent. And then, firing Tim Rice, Yeah,
okay.
By the way, my first question after somebody, broke the news to me was, I wonder what Tom Staggs is doing these days. Honest to God, first question. It was like, what is Tom Staggs doing?
Remember, Bob Iger survives his own debacle to finally become Disney's new CEO in September of 2005. But as early as 2009, he's being pressured to look, we don't want to go through what we did with Michael Eisner. You have to name a CEO. And so remember, November of 2009, we got that announcement how Jay Rizzullo and Tom Staggs were going to swap jobs. The CFO and the chairman of the parks were going to be, because they were in a bake-off to see who would become the next CEO of the company, Bob Iger's successor. We jump ahead to 2015, and Jay Rizzullo learns that, okay, Tom's got the inside track, so he decides that he's going to resign from the company in the spring of 2015. But then the very next year, Tom Staggs learns that Ike Perlmutter, who's the chairman of Marvel Entertainment, more to the point, he owns a giant block of Disney stock that he got when Disney acquired Marvel in August of 2009. Ike Perlmutter is now mad at Bob Iger because in May of 2015, Iger had negotiated this deal where Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel Studios, didn't have to interact with Ike Perlmutter anymore, who had been interfering with the Marvel movies. And Ike got mad at Bob. So what he does is he reaches out to Lauren Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, who got a giant block of stock when Steve passed in October of 2011. I mean, she got control of all of the Disney stock that Jobs got when Disney bought Pixar in January of 2006. So Perlmutter reaches out to Steve Jobs' widow and convinces her that Tom Staggs is a poor choice for Disney's next CEO. Just to oots Bob Iger. And so Staggs finds out about it and finds that, okay, his path to becoming Disney CEO is blocked. So he leaves the company.
Right.
And Iger has to start over. But just this past year, January of this year, in fact, we find out that Tom Staggs and Kevin Meyer, who, by the way, had also worked for Disney for
Disney.
He had actually been in charge of Disney's streaming efforts, and he leaves Disney in May of 2020 because, again, Bob Chapek has now been tapped to be the company's new CEO. And it's like, I can't work with that guy. So they go off and form their own media company, Candle Media.
Yep.
And to give you some idea of how long this has supposedly been in the works, there was a story in the trades just yesterday about a board member reaching out in mid-summer to Tom Staggs and Kevin Meyer and basically asked them, look, would one or both of you like to come back to the Disney company to run the place? And
yeah. But hold on, they because I heard that they would have had to acquire Candle Media to do that, and then Chapek would have had to approve that, and that's why it didn't happen.
Remember, this is chess led. It's like, okay, just checking. Is there an interest? Okay, cool. I got to move a few pieces around the board. I'll be back.
I've heard there have been a lot of phone calls. So this one goes farther back than I thought, because if you're saying it's 6 months. But I've heard, like, in the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of phone calls to people who have, like, left the company or, and I'm air quoting here, retired, right? It'll be like, hey, how firm are you on that leaving? You got some spare time? You want to come around the offices? We've really improved the cafeteria lately. You should come by and check it out.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. In fact, I've actually heard a specific time frame, that the next 5 months.
Yeah.
And people have been paying attention to the stories as they've been rolling out. First of all, Bob Iger is only back for 2 years. And supposedly who set the limit on the 2 years? That wasn't the board. That wasn't Bob.
Bob Iger's wife.
That Willow Bay. Yes.
Oh, she's got to be done. She's got to be done with all this.
Susan Arnold, the chairman of the board of the Walt Disney Company, did not reach out to Bob Iger about coming back till 3 o'clock this past Friday. So think about that.
Right, exactly.
So this news breaks at like 10 o'clock Eastern on Sunday. So this came together at lightning speed.
Yeah, 48 hours, yeah.
Evidently, the joke was that when Bob went to Willow and basically explained, look, I'm the guy who picked this guy. He's the guy who's running Disney into the ground. I got to go back and clean up my mess. And she's like, okay, you got 2 years. If at the end of 2 years, because remember, this is the guy who postponed his retirement at the Disney company 4 times.
4 times, yeah.
All right, so it's like, look, if at the end of 2 years you are thinking about this, I will get Giselle, Tom Brady's wife's
divorce lawyer
on speed dial, and,
exactly.
And we will have a conversation.
Yeah, so. Disney will either have you as CEO in 2 years, or Hollywood will have the most expensive divorce ever seen.
There we go.
Yeah, God bless her. She's patient. But you bring up a point. Iger does not have a great history of developing successors. And I don't know that 2 years is enough time to do that.
And that's the other thing, frankly, that people need to be real. I mean, again, what's interesting, you go around social media, look, people, it's like, when Dorothy arrives in Munchkinland, ding dong, the witch is dead. It's like, no, guys, be realistic. There's so little that he can actually do. Mind you, yes, the very thing you were talking about, so many of the people who have walked away from the company because I can't deal with this guy could perhaps be persuaded back. And what's interesting to me, Len, is the stuff that already very quietly is sort of leaking out. Like, for example, have you heard that the Lake Nona deal is dead? It's done.
I did hear that, but I heard it on Friday, and I can't say where I heard it from.
Yeah, but yeah, moving the Imagineering campus to Florida, that's off the table now. Also, we were just talking on the last show about the Global Dream, that new cruise ship that Disney picked up.
Suspicious timing, you told me.
The story I'm now being told is literally Disney finds out from the shipyard that, look, this is sitting here and they're going into bankruptcy and you can pick this up. And the cruise line folks go over and kick the tires to come back and go, it's a ship that's designed to have a giant casino at its very center.
It would take a lot of work. We've already got, we're already committed to 2 other ships.
There we go.
There
we go. Okay, this is a Bob Chapek who's desperate to turn around his reputation with Wall Street. Bob Chapek wants to be seen as a Bob Iger-like deal maker. So the notion of, I'm the really smart guy who picked up a cruise ship for pennies on the dollar. Say nice things about me. Yeah. And on the other hand, the Disney cruise folks are already like, we have just launched a new ship. We have 2 more ships being built.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out fixing the minor issues that are going on in the Wish. We've got 2 more ships due in 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah,
You're going to add another ship onto it and keep the same time frame.
Yeah.
It's almost like Bob Chapek is sending out a memo saying, you have to be hardcore to work here. Click this button to stay employed at Disney Cruise Line. But that would be crazy, Jim. Nobody would ever do that.
Nobody would ever do that. So I'm hearing that the Global Dream is basically, how when Disney was being pursued by the Green Mailers and they made that deal with Gibson greeting cards, or for that matter, when they formed an alliance with Arvida, the real estate development company, and then once Michael came through the door as the new CEO, those deals went away. They paid kill fees, and those things didn't happen.
Oh, you think there's a kill fee for the Global Dream? Because I think they're still going to do it. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, you probably have more inside information than I do. I'm just speculating.
It's just that the cruise line folks who are initially just being quiet about the fact that we said no and Chapek made the deal anyway are, just sort of, when can we have that meeting with Mr. Iger?
Exactly. It's probably lower on his list of things to do.
It is. So
yeah, but I still see the appeal of it. We'll see what happens. My sense is that unless the get out of the deal fee is so remarkably low, they'll probably move forward with it, because in the overall scheme of things, it's not a huge capital outlay burden. It was already baked into their existing capital expenditures. And frankly, if it's a choice between Bob Iger saying, you know what, I'm going to have to put a lot of work into killing this deal and explaining it to the cruise people, or let me go repair some relationships in Hollywood, where do you think his time is better spent?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But I don't know if you listened to Kai Ryssdal yesterday, but they was talking about when a new CEO...
I can't believe Kai Ryssdal didn't call me. I'm kind of mildly upset at that, but all right, go ahead.
But he was talking about typically when a new CEO takes over the company, there's a familiarization tour, to the effect of meets with all the heads of the division.
Yeah, but for when Iger walks in, it's like, oh, Bob, here's your 2 scoops of scrambled eggs, hash browns, and toast, just the way you like it.
There you go. There you go.
Exactly.
Well, that's the whole notion. Hit the ground running. Make the repairs. And the fact that by Monday, Bob Chapek was out the door, and his good right arm, his second in command, Kareem Daniel.
Yeah, out at Disney Media and Entertainment. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because going back to the Hollywood thing, they did the restructuring 2020, where they basically took financial control away from the people who made the movies, the content, and that made people really upset, right?
There was the earnings call, and then Bob Chapek on the Friday following the earnings call, with that memo to the effect of, okay, hiring freeze, we're going to do layoffs, we're going to make hard choices. And there were a number of folks that's like, look, this is the no turning back point. If he starts deciding who gets fired, and starts trimming the company, we're never going to be able to turn this around.
Yeah, nobody will want to work there for 10 years. Yeah.
There we go. But the thing that supposedly finally got, just to say, okay, we have to do something now. Story I'm being told is that Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel, this meant pausing a number of animated series that Marvel had in the works for Disney Plus. And Kevin...
Yeah, and you're like, guys, you need streaming content.
Well, no.
Why would you do this? It's like literally the wrong decision, the exactly wrong decision.
All right, well, but you've nailed it. Okay, and so Kevin's trying to have a common sense conversation with Kareem to the effect of, okay, I get cutting, making budget concessions for the giant Marvel movies that we have.
Yeah, that cost, $300 million to make. Yeah, I get that.
But this is literally an animated series. We can get like 10, 13 episodes for tens of millions of dollars. And it creates content and, and more to the point,
this is as cheap as it gets, and this is as cheap as content gets at Hollywood,
That's
right?
Exactly. And Kareem basically was like, well, no, I mean, look, everybody here at the company has to do their share, and we'd love it if you'd set an example and get on board with this. And things got evidently a little heated, and word got back to Susan Arnold, the chairman of the board at Disney. And Susan, just in the past couple of weeks or so, we've learned about James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, the three Guardians films, and the holiday special will be dropping next week. He's now gone over to Warner's and will be running their DC movie division.
Yeah, not a great sign for Disney there.
But here's the thing, Len. Earlier this summer, when they were having their issues as Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers Discovery, through back channels, actually reaches out to Kevin Feige and says, hey, look, how would you like to, love what you're doing with the MCU over at Marvel Studios. Would you like to do the same thing with the DC characters?
Yeah, because DC's just been mired in mediocrity on its
absolutely
on its superhero franchises. I mean, it's just nothing there is great. Even Margot Robbie couldn't save it.
Yeah, but down. Like, no, I'm happy what I'm doing at Disney, and it's very flattering to be offered the DC stuff. But Susan has been looking at the talent that's walking out the door, whether it's the Bob Weisses, the chairman of Walt Disney Imagineering, who was supposed to, be staying on as in a creative ambassador role, who, just after a few months, no, I'm out. And it's just sort of like, could we really afford to lose a Kevin Feige over somebody who's, again, who lives and dies by a spreadsheet? And more to the point, Kareem Daniels is acting the way he is because he feels protected by Bob Chapek. It's like, we have to move. And that's where we are now. And in fact, to circle back to Chapek, what you were saying at the very start of the today's podcast, that you face it, Bob Chapek had thought this Sunday night spent a very pleasant time at Dodger Stadium watching Elton John's last concert of his North American, his final North American tour. And it didn't make it there. And what was fascinating, evidently, I've had a number of people talk about how it's the Disney VIP tent at Dodger Stadium, and everybody's in there enjoying their cocktails, waiting for the concert to begin, and their phones start blowing up.
Yeah, like our phones started blowing up,
and everybody looks at their phone, and it's like, honey, I gotta go. It's like, I gotta go find out if I still have a job.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what's going on at Disney right now. There's a number of folks who have been put in place by Bob Chapek since he took over as Disney CEO back in February of 2020.
Yeah, Jim, I think the number of people inside Disney in Burbank who are ordering Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think the number has skyrocketed over the last couple of days. Like the Kindle edition is probably selling like hotcakes over there. Okay. I will say this too, Jim. I think, and I don't know if you said the same thing to the Orlando Sentinel in the interview yesterday, but I am convinced that now that with this move, absolutely nothing meaningful happens to the Reedy Creek Improvement District in Florida, because it allows Ron DeSantis to say, we got what we wanted, right? The guy who, tried to stand up to us is now gone. Disney can say, this is what you can claim as a victory. I think what's going to happen, I think you and I have heard the same thing. Disney might give up a couple of seats on the Reedy Creek Improvement Board. They're going to give up the unused parts of the Reedy Creek Improvement District powers, like they won't be able to build a nuclear power plant. Okay. But then largely speaking, it's all going to be the same. And if nothing else, under a different name. And I think this smooths that path towards that, where really nothing changes when everyone gets what they want out of it.
If you look at the press, you look what happened with the Disney stock price yesterday.
Was it a $30 billion bump?
Yeah. Which again,
cap?
And think about it. What Disney recovered during that period will cover whatever Bob Iger is going to be doing over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part of the Susan Arnold's pitch to Iger to come back. Evidently, it's like, look, we have this guy because you picked him as a successor. Exactly. All right, you need to come back and clean up your mess. And in fact, if we go back to February of 2020, and here's Bob Iger looking at what's happening in Asia. Shanghai Disneyland closes on January 25th. Hong Kong Disneyland closes on the day after that. And already he's, reading the tea leaves about what's going to happen in Tokyo with the Disney parks there. And
look at the time, gotta go. I should retire.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly.
There's a story there, Jim, that we have not heard yet.
No, absolutely. But for me, and again, I know you and Laurel have been shouldering your way through, how many seasons of The Love Boat?
We're on the last full season, so season 9 right now, yeah.
Okay, for me, to look at that moment when late February of 2020, when Bob Iger, after announcing that he'll be stepping down as the chairman of the Walt Disney Company, and that was 2019. That at the end of 2021, I'm stepping away. But for him, in February of 2020, to throw the keys to Bob Chapek, it's the equivalent of Captain Stubing on the deck of the Pacific Princess, looks out, sees the iceberg, and goes, "Gopher, take the wheel. I'm going downstairs, and the passengers need to learn about macrame. I'm going to go,
Exactly. Gopher, take the helm."
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the part of the story you have to be fair about. Bob Chapek takes over the Walt Disney Company just as the pandemic happens, which totally screws up every single business line at Disney. The parks, the theaters, the movies going to theaters. Even, the only saving grace, the lifeboat during that period, ironically enough, is the thing that's got him in trouble now, streaming.
Streaming, yeah.
I don't think anybody could have done a good job of running the Disney.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things going against him. It was the pandemic. Now we're in an inflationary period. People are talking about a recession. I mean, it's a lot. Nobody could have done it.
Oh, no. But to then have a guy with a tin ear who's not good at reading the room.
That's the thing. He couldn't get sympathy. There was no sympathy for him. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, again, we're back to Bob Iger, and the Disney fans are dancing in the street. In fact, have you seen the meme where it's Bob Chapek as Thanos? It's like, "I am inevitable." And then they cut to Bob Iger. "Yes, but I am Iger Man." And he snapped his fingers.
I haven't seen that one. I've seen the Haunted Mansion gravestones with rhymes that are also kind of funny.
Yeah. But that's where we are now. But again, all I ask is Glenn and I are continuing to follow this story, and every day new stories or new aspects of the story get out there. But we all have to be realistic about what a Bob Iger can do in this situation. I mean, it's a great message to the creative community. But
right, I don't think anything in the short term is going to change at the parks. Like I just don't see anything like that happening. He's got way bigger problems to work on right now. And frankly, the parks are making money here. He's really got to focus on streaming and relationships.
They are, but let me throw one last little tidbit out here. Supposedly, on the back of that corporate meeting that Chapek had at Disney, I want to say in late October, early November, when they had all the execs down at the casino, there was already a plan in place, Len, to shut down park reservations. The notion was that this is something that really upsets guests. Let's make this go away. So think about it. Bob Chapek, if he'd hung in there maybe another week to 10 days, this would have been announced supposedly after Thanksgiving, and I don't know the exact time frame they were talking about shutting down the reservation system, but supposedly now this is going to be one of the very first things that gets announced under Bob Iger's watch. Everyone will, oh my God, Bob Iger has canceled reservations at the park, let's stage a parade. And it's like, no, that was Bob Chapek, but he didn't last in the job long enough to get the chance to do it. Yeah. So let's be careful about how quickly we get into the whole hero worship thing here. I mean, we have to be realistic.
And some of the things, like we know, we've talked about it a little bit. Some of the changes that are coming to Genie Plus and Genie and whatever, those things are, and they'll come in, in 2023. Those things have been in the works for a while.
Absolutely.
All right.
Long story short, folks, Len and I have quite a bit more to talk about on Disney News. So
we'll also have a regular episode coming out on Monday as usual. And we'll hopefully nothing big changes between now and then, Jim, so we can enjoy our Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, what could happen, Len?
What could possibly happen in the next 96 hours? All right, fair enough.
Okay.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show and Jim Hill Media by subscribing over at disneydish.bandcamp.com, where you'll find exclusive shows never before heard on iTunes, including our latest series on Disney's Cars Land. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who'll be taking on his creative rivals from the House of Nipschultz at the 2023 Big Island Chocolate Festival on Saturday, April 29th, 2023, starting at 11 a.m. at the Waikiola Beach Marriott Resort and Spa in beautiful beachside Waikiola Beach, Hawaii. While Aaron's doing that, please go on to iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.
This episode is brought to you by 20th Century Studios' new film, Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, starring Golden Globe winner Jeremy Allen White and Academy Award nominee Jeremy Strong. Scott Cooper, the director of the Academy Award-winning movie Crazy Heart, brings you the story of the most pivotal chapter in the life of an icon. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Only in theaters October 24th. Get your tickets now.